beauty is everywhere, and our job is just to remove that little bit of fat that's preventing that really nice shape from showing. It's there, right? Women are all beautiful in their own way, and the question is, how do we just make them look the way they feel they should look? Not I feel they should look.
Welcome to the Beauty Talk podcast, where we feature how the best medical practitioners help their patients to look better, younger, and healthier. Now, enjoy the show, and here's your host.
Daniel Gao here. I'm the host of Beauty Talk. We feature the top medical practitioners in health and beauty, both inside and out. I have Dr. Daniel Souza, a board-certified plastic surgeon who's focused on pushing cosmetic surgery forward through both aesthetic and innovation. He's earned a master's in clinical epidemiology from McGill, completed medical school and plastic surgery training at Université de Montréal, and went on to advanced aesthetic fellowships at the University of Toronto and Yale, including a specialization in cosmetic breast surgery. After founding Sculpt, he created Soft Sculpt, an awake 360 liposuction and fat transfer approach designed to be safe, gentle, and close to pain-free. He's also been appointed to the Safety Task Force for BBL surgery and has authored highly peer-reviewed research on safety protocols for BBL procedures, all while being known for a warm, compassionate approach and natural-looking results. So Dr. Souza, welcome and glad to have you here.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's start at the very top level. How did you first get interested in the medical field?
Yeah, that's a question I've had many times in my life. It's a question that comes back in interviews when you're a young student, trying to get into medical school and then into residency and then into fellowships, and everybody always wants to know that. And I would say that my story is one of exposure, just being exposed. I was exposed through my father. I was exposed through his colleagues. I was exposed through people around. And I think we're all exposed to a lot of things in our lives. The question is, what kind of piques your curiosity? What gets you interested? And so those are the things I think that shape us, that mold us, and that kind of help us find our path. A lot of people say, well, I don't know, especially when we're young, what am I going to do? I don't know what I want to do. I'm not sure what I like. And so I think it's really that is just kind of, we're exposed to a lot of things. The question is what really grabs our interest and our curiosity, and then just kind of following that path and finding our way and finding what really interests us and what keeps us excited about getting up in the morning and doing another day of that thing. So that was my story. I was exposed. My father was in the medical field, and so I was always exposed to a lot of interesting people. I was introduced and met very, very interesting characters in the medical field, and everybody came with their stories. And when people tell stories of interesting things that they were exposed to, and it's something that kind of touches you, I think that's something that kind of helps helps a person find their path.
Okay. And did you know that you wanted to get into aesthetics kind of in an early on in that process, or was that kind of a transition that as you got into the medical field, then you learned about aesthetics, and then you kind of moved into aesthetics later on down the road?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the normal pathway would be, first you realize you like medicine, and then you kind of do that, and then in medicine you're exposed to more stuff, right? To different specialties, some surgical, some non-surgical. But in my case, I knew I was already kind of interested in the artistic side of things. And I was already interested in the manual side of things. I was always kind of building things, taking them apart, drawing, scribbling. My mother kind of exposed me to that. She has this artistic sense. She sculpts, she paints, and she's always kind of encouraged that, even though she was obviously very hard at pushing us academically, but there was always that side, music, art, whether it was drawing, stone carving, which I've done, and she still does. And so I think that because of that, I had already kind of figured out that, I think medicine is great. I think I'm going to be a good fit. I love it. It's interesting. I want to understand how the human body works and how to help people. But also, there's this artistic side that I didn't want to just kind of let go of. And the manual side that I loved, I was always tinkering with stuff. So it just kind of made sense. I started thinking, well, I guess that's it. I guess it's plastics. I mean, it just kind of fell into my lap like that. Again, but always based on interest. So you have to figure out what you like first. And then once you realize these are the things that I like, well, then you can find a good fit. There's so many opportunities, so many options in this world that then it's just a matter of making it fit.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
you kind of went along this journey. What was that point where you decided that you wanted to open your own practice? What led you to that decision?
Yeah. I remember that very, very well. I was a young surgeon. I still consider myself young, but I was
Younger.
younger, exactly younger, and I was working in a few different places, uh, different types of practices. Just again, finding my way, finding my path, figuring out exactly what I liked in aesthetics. I already had great training. Some amazing surgeons had taught me, how to do all of these surgeries, but you still have to figure out exactly what you like. For example, somebody who specializes in noses is probably going to dedicate his life to that, right? If you want to be really, really good at it, that's probably all you should do, or very close to it. Same thing with facelifts, same things with, with body surgery, breast in particular. Some of the best breast surgeons I know, some of them who trained me, some of them who've guided me over the years before I kind of found this body path, are surgeons who literally did only breast, and they were amazing at it. They did other stuff too, but that was their focus. And I I went through all of these stages. I worked in a bunch of different practices, and I started realizing that I loved the body. I loved it. It just reminded me of stone carving. It reminded me of just molding, shaping, and but trickier, right? Trickier, because the worst thing that happens when you're stone carving is the stone breaks. You speak to anybody who does stone carving, like, oh no, now I have a crack. You can glue it back together, but that crack, it haunts you forever. So, or you have to start over. Whereas with the human body, there's so many additional variables. It's not just taking fat out of fat into another area and just looking at it and saying, oh, that looks great. There's so many other components. Some of it's going to be reabsorbed. There's swelling. There's liquid that's injected there to numb things that's going to be reabsorbed. You have to guess, and the more you do it, the better you get at guessing. How much extra do I need to put here so that when everything settles, it's going to look the way I want it to look? So you're overcompensating, undercompensating. Some areas you don't want to take out too much because that's not going to work, or that's risky, or you might get divots. So it's really constantly readjusting to something that it's not enough to see it. If your surgery is perfect, the moment it's done, and then you put the garment on and you send them home, it's not going to be perfect, right? And there is no such thing as perfect. But if you want it to be as close as possible, on the table at the moment you're done, it shouldn't look perfect, because there's things that are going to change afterwards. And that's what you had. That's experience, right? Experience is kind of being able to compensate for that. So I just found that so interesting. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. You really have to, you're not working with bones here that are going to heal and stay where they are. You're working with soft tissue, and soft tissue is going to behave differently depending on where it is on the body, depending on how the skin is. Is it very tight? Is it loose? Has there been kids or not? There's so many components, so many variables, and I just love the challenge. I thought it was a lot of fun, and once I found that, well, then I started working in some places and doing only that, and that's when I started thinking, think we can do it better. I think we can do it better. I think we can do it safer. I think we can, and with all the respect in the world for the people that I worked for, and the people who trained me. And I think it's just evolution. I think the same way we don't just stop, and I like cars as an example because everyone has one, and it's, most people have one. Unless you're lucky enough to live somewhere where you can just walk around, and or like in Europe where people don't. But cars are just kind of, they're everywhere. You see them all the time. And uh, the car has evolved. We didn't just stop. We didn't just leave the car alone 30 years ago and say, that's it, we're done. This car is good. There's no reason to improve it. So I think the same thing happens in our field where I was there and I'm like, okay, what's the next version of the car, right? How do we, I think we can do this better, right? I think we can tweak it. We can improve it. We can, like I said, make it safer, make it more comfortable. And that's when you take what already exists and what's been developed and tweaked and what has evolved over many years, and you try to add your touch to it. You try to make it better. And so technology was one of the components that I felt hadn't really evolved in a long time, and we were using stuff that was just kind of there. And again, worked great, but I think there was a lot of opportunity and a lot of room to improve that. So that was a big focus. Techniques, how do we kind of tweak things, and again, standing on the shoulders of giants in the past, right? Not criticizing anybody, just saying, how do I do my share to bring us forward, to help the evolution of our practice? And then, in terms of safety, always little improvements in technique and in technologies that will act at the level of safety. Choosing the path with no general anesthesia, that also for me made a lot of sense. 98, 99% of people are great candidates for that. There's a tiny, tiny little percentage that are just too sensitive or just can't do it. But for the vast, vast majority of people, it's a no-brainer. And they'll tell you, they're like, oh, I'm so glad I did it this way. I avoided the general anesthesia. My recovery was faster. I know it's safer. So it's just kind of, I think that's how I found it. That's how I approached it. And it was with a lot of humility and just kind of looking at how can we improve? Where do we need to do? What do we need to do to evolve now that we're here?
Yeah. Well, I think you're definitely helping move that evolution along. And so I want to dive a little bit into soft sculpt, which you founded.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about soft sculpt? Like, how is it different from your, I guess, traditional plastic surgery treatments?
Yeah. Well, listen, soft sculpt is a name, right? You name something that you think is good, is better, is different, and the soft in the name I think says a lot. And sculpt is the brand with the Q, but it also says kind of what we're doing. And I think that sculpting can be something that is rough, or it can be something that is soft. And I think that was the idea behind all of it, is we were always thinking, how do we make this more gentle? How can we be more gentle on the body? And there's a lot of reasons to be more gentle. If you're more gentle on the body, it means you're going to have less pain. You're going to have less pain during the procedure. You're going to have less pain after the procedure, and when I say less during the procedure, I mean, ideally, zero pain at all. But even if there is a little pinch here and there, controlling pain with more medication is not as good as controlling pain with less trauma and being more delicate and making smaller holes and using smaller instruments and using them in ways that are less traumatic and making sure that there's the least damage possible to the tissues. Because if you do things more gently, you're going to have less trauma, less pain, faster recovery. You're going to have less scarring. You're going to have less complications. You're going to probably have less infections. These are things that are kind of hard to measure with science, but it's kind of it's a fair guess to say that if I cause less trauma, the immune system isn't going to be bothered as much, right? Everything's going to be more intact, and the body's going to be able to defend itself, and the already low rate of infection should be even smaller. And so this is the truth about everything: is the less trauma and damage we cause, the better. So soft sculpt was really based around that. Every little aspect of what we do was reevaluated, right? And again, I didn't invent liposuction, right? I didn't invent the power assisted liposuction. It would be for people to pretend these things, because, the liposuction has existed since the 60s, or let's say 70s, in its more recent form, and then has evolved from there. And so many incredible surgeons have contributed to it. But that was the approach. Okay, now we're here, and thank you to all the incredible surgeons who got us here. But how do we take it to the next level? How do we just make it a little bit safer and a little bit better and a little bit faster recovery? And just everything is little tweaks. And anybody who pretends like they've completely revolutionized, that's why those words, I try to stay away from them. Probably not true. My dad used to always say, if it sounds hard to believe, it's probably not, right? If it
Mhm.
doesn't sound true, it's probably not. If
Mhm.
it's so I that's kind of how I see it, is we've made these tweaks, but I also believe that when you make a lot of tiny little tweaks, all of that adds up, and
Mhm.
all of that does make a big difference.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how that came. That's how it was born, how Soft Sculpt was born, both the name and the approach.
Okay. And how significant is it for the awake portion of it? Because I think that in my mind, that's a pretty significant portion. I would imagine that for most of these uh, procedures that they put you under and you don't want to be awake during it, but yours is they're awake. So how significant is that? Because I mean, I guess that just kind of ties into less trauma, less pain, so that they can be awake. So could you talk a little bit more about that part of it?
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that. Look, I'm not anti-anesthesia. I don't see things in black and white. I don't think that's the right approach. So my view of it is that anesthesia has revolutionized medicine. That's something that revolutionized medicine, right? It's rare that we can actually say that, but that permitted us to do all kinds of surgeries that were not possible before. I mean, we've all seen the movies with the guy, biting on a stick, drinking a shot of whiskey, and having his head sawed off. I mean, those days changed when anesthesia became possible.
Mhm.
And so it's a very important thing. That being said, anesthesia carries risks, like any medical procedure. And there are immediate risks. And we're not going to go through them because I don't think that's the point here. And people can look them up if they're curious. And then there's medium-term risks, and there's long-term risks that they're starting to discover. Like, for example, even if everything went perfectly, with specific neuropsychological testing, they have seen that in some people, even one or two, bouts of general anesthesia can change your brain, you change your cognition, change your, little tiny changes. But again, why not avoid them if we can? And that's a best case scenario. That's when there's no problems.
Mhm.
So again, if you need general anesthesia because you're getting something medically done, absolutely 100% thank you, for the invention of general anesthesia and the great minds who brought this to medicine, because it has changed medicine. But if you don't need it, and that's kind of where we come in, I'm surprised that not all of liposuction, or 95% is done awake today. I'm surprised that it's still lagging, because for me, I see these patients, and the vast majority of them, they're like snoozing on the table. Like, you give them a little nudge, they wake up, they're like, hey, and
Mhm.
but they're there, they're awake. Some of them are on their phones, or they're just kind of relaxing. And we've had patients like FaceTime friends like, oh my God, look at this. And I mean, I'm not for the theatrics, but it kind of is that is the reality. So if you can get that many people comfortable doing this, having a great experience, reducing the risks of general anesthesia, and even reducing surgical risks, because that's another thing people don't know, is that you eliminate the anesthesia risks. That's the obvious one. If there's no general anesthesia, there's no general anesthesia risks. That's kind of pretty simple to grasp.
Mhm.
But if you eliminate general anesthesia, you also eliminate some surgical risks. So, for example, when you do surgery, one of the risks is getting a blood clot. Thank God it's very small. It
Mhm.
doesn't happen often, and we screen for these things, and we make sure, and we've never had any in thousands of procedures, but you're always worried, always scared. So you want to reduce that as much as possible. Well, general anesthesia, because your body is completely flask and immobilized and paralyzed, you barely move during the procedure. And that is an increased risk of blood clots. Whereas our patients, they're moving around. Hey, can you turn? Can you lift your arm? Can you this? They'll have like a pee break at some point. They'll have a little snack or some water,
Mhm.
which is crazy when you think about it, but that's just what it is, because they're awake. So
Mhm.
they're hungry, they're thirsty, they're hydrating normally, they're moving. All of these things contribute to reducing surgical risks that would otherwise be there with general anesthesia. So removing general anesthesia, for me, just kind of makes sense if you can. If you can't and you need it medically, there's no question about it. And then even cosmetically, some patients are just, there's a small percentage that are not candidates for awake procedures. They're just too sensitive. They don't deal with pain the same way. And that's totally fine. But if we could eliminate it for all the people who are candidates, I think it would make a huge difference in the overall complications that we see in our field. And I think that it's just a matter of education. And it's incredible how many people I meet in my life, and I'll tell them what I do. They'll ask me like, "What do you do?" And I'll explain it to them, and like, you can do that awake. So they don't even know it exists. Or then they'll be like, you can do a breast augmentation with fat. You don't need implants. And I'm like, yeah. And so I'm always amazed. I mean, you would think by now with social media that everybody would be aware and they'd be making these decisions knowing that. You know how many women have told me, if I knew I wouldn't have put implants, I would have done fat. Again, nothing against implants, per se. I think for some women who have no fat and or who have a very specific breast shape or who want something very specific, I think it's great. But women should at least know. I think it is our job as surgeons to educate women about all the options and not only the options that we offer.
What do you wish that some of your patients would know before they even come looking for someone like yourself and your services? What do you wish they knew?
I think the most important thing is knowing that something exists. That's the basis of everything, because once you know something exists, you can go research it. You can go dig in. Access to information today is so easy. And I remember using microfilms at a library, like nobody, people hear microfilms. What's a microfilm? I'll tell you what a microfilm is. It is this sheet of blue semi-transparent plastic that they used to print on tiny information that you couldn't see without a special magnifying kind of this machine with a light underneath, and you'd look in and then you'd kind of move this joystick around to find what you're looking for, and that would permit you to find a book in a library. Because how do you find a book in a massive library? That's how. I mean, so to go from that to what we have today, and I would have said today 5 years ago when it was just, the internet, Google, being able to search. Now you have access to LLMs, you have access to AI. I mean, once you know something exists, you can very easily today do deep research, read up about it, even become an expert about it. We have patients who come in. It's impressive how much they know because there's access to information today. And you can ask your ChatGPT to, hey, can you explain this to me, right? I don't have a medical background. Can you give this to me? Give it to me in 2 pages so I understand, what is this awake procedure thing? What is this using fat to create breasts, right? Instead of implants. What is, right? Well, all of these things, and you will get the information. And so the key is knowing it exists. Because if you don't know it exists, you don't even know that you need to research it. It just doesn't exist in your brain. So education about the existence of what's out there, not just what we do, what everybody does. And I think that's the basis. Once you know something exists and you understand what the options are, well, you can research them and you can make an informed decision.
Okay, so then let's say that they go through this path, they do the research, they kind of learn more about these different procedures, and then they have one that they have in mind that they want to do. So the next step is now they need to look for a surgeon who can help them with this. So what advice would you give to somebody that's doing this search? They kind of have an idea of what they're looking for, but now they need to find the surgeon to help them. So how can they find that surgeon that has the experience, has the knowledge, and can really get them the end result they're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm going to give you the best answer I can, and it might be a little all over the place because this is a very tough one. There is no real review site, that gives you the real honest truth about how good a surgery you're going to obtain from somebody is, how safe the surgery you're going to obtain from a surgeon is, or from a practice or a clinic. There just isn't. I mean, reviews are doctors, the competition is fierce out there. Marketing is aggressive. A lot of big practices get sued for, false advertising, for example, for saying things that sound good but are not entirely true. Like, yeah, you'll be back at work tomorrow. That's
Mm.
it's crazy, right? So I think it's always tricky because you have to be honest and you have to tell people the truth, but you also don't want people away and competing, unfortunately, sometimes unethical, right? Competitors. And so it's a very fine line. I can tell you that we have always been aggressive, on the pushing for honesty and clear, real information. Uh, but I mean, it's tough out there for a person looking for surgery. I think it's tough. It's become, like I said, very competitive, and when things get competitive, sometimes the lines between kidding and dishonesty get blurred, and it's very tough. Maybe the best is, as much research as, even a positive review doesn't mean much today, and even a negative review doesn't mean much today. I mean, we've had people leave reviews that we don't even know, they're not our patients. We've seen negative reviews where we're like, we try to find them, try to communicate with them. Who is this? We have no idea who it is. It's just not know that it's not one of our patients. The story doesn't match up, the name, nothing. It's so even editors do stuff like this, and so it's tough. You have to do the best research you can, and sometimes referrals from somebody who had a great experience. But even then, you have a referral from somebody, and then they have experience, and that was just off for that practice. So it's tricky. I can tell you one thing that I think can help is specialization. It's one of the reasons that really kind of focused us is we only do awake liposuction, we do nothing else, right? Like liposuction and fat transfer. And even within the realm, we pretty much exclusively do women liposuction. Um, Not that men's liposuction is different, but just trying to be like as focused as possible, as specialized as possible. Because I think the more you do the same thing over and over and over again, the better you get it. Right? Of course, with guidance and instruction and teaching and speaking to your colleagues and constantly reading and staying at the forefront of the knowledge being published. But really ultra specialization, especially with something manual like surgery, just kind of repeating the same thing over and over. That's when you really realize the nuances that it may seem at first when you haven't done thousands of them, like it's the same procedure. But the more you do, the more you realize those little nuances of, but her skin is a bit thin and the way it's attached to the muscle underneath, that's a bit tighter. But if I release too much of that, I'm going to get a little bit of sagging. So these tiny, tiny little, infinitesimal details that start becoming the everyday nuance of what you do that before you couldn't even see because you hadn't done enough of them. So I think specialization is key, and just kind of trying to do as much research as possible around that. Taking everything with a grain of salt, positive and negative results, and looking at before and afters, and asking for even more than what's published. Give me more. Give me more. You have more before and afters, like we have. I don't know, thousands, right? Sometimes people ask for more. We'll give them more, and we try to not only post. That's something else. Is publication bias, which is posting only the good stuff, posting only the best results. That's not the right way to do things, right? You have to post a little bit of a mix. Some of the stuff we post is not, because that's the reality, right? Sometimes the skin, somebody is a little bit loose. You don't know how it's going to retract. So I'll stop here because I can go on and on and on, but I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
That's good advice for people that just have no idea where to start.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, Dutch Souza, where do you think the future of aesthetics is going?
I wish I knew the future then. It's okay if I call you Dan, by the way.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I wish I knew the future. It's amazing how far it's come already. It's incredible. Like I remember being a young surgeon, a resident, and we were starting to inject fat to reconstruct breast that had had cancer and that had issues with implants. So when you get implants for cancer, the sometimes the skin gets hard. It really, the implant gets rejected. The wounds open up. It's just not. Just doesn't work. And the tissue that is irradiated, again, this is necessary, right? This is for cancer. You got to do it. But that tissue, that breast tissue, gets really really hard. We were starting to experiment with this, and we didn't invent it, right? I mean, these are some of my mentors and my professors. But I remember we were starting to put some fat into those breasts and try to reconstruct them because worked and the tissues were hard. And that's when we started realizing that fat would actually soften that radiated tissue. And a lot of research has been done since. And what we know now is that there are stem cells and other factors and growth factors and all kinds of stuff in live fat that when you re-inject it into another area, it will actually change the tissue in that area and, in a sense, kind of rejuvenate it. I mean, if you can partially reverse the damage caused by radiation given for cancer, well, you can imagine that it will also have a positive impact on skin elsewhere in the body. And so, just another added benefit of fat transfers. But I think, back to the question, the evolution has been incredible. I think it would have been hard to predict 10 years ago where we are today. And I think it's going to be hard, probably even more difficult today, predict where we're going to be 10 years because with the access we have now to AI, solving big data problems, solving mathematical equations that have been sitting there for 100 years in hours. I mean, we now have access to a super brain that is going to help everything solve. Overall, is it good for us? Who knows? But there's definitely going to be accelerated evolution. And think in the field of surgery, things that are possible. These are not predictions. Everything from robotics, doctors, surgeons being replaced, surgeons teaching robots rather than the surgeries and maybe supervising and eventually not even at all. How long, over how much, who knows? But that alone is a possibility. And, we're already starting to see robotics in our everyday life. The robot vacuum, that was one of the first ones, and they just keep getting better and better to pick up your socks. We're at the beginning. So I think robotics is a big one. Artificial intelligence. So in the decision-making process, for example, instead of a surgeon coming up with a plan for your cosmetic surgery, it would be AI. AI would analyze your face, take measurements, have a 3D image. We already have these 3D scanners, right? But now it would tell us what to do. You want to put 3 syringes of fillers in here. She probably needs a lift lip, right? And it would just make everybody better, right? Of course, once it's up to speed and it's right. But once you have this AI that's trained on all the best minds in the world and has refined itself, I mean, that becomes the future. So robotics, AI, and then there's the medical side of cosmetic surgery, which is the goal of everything, of the vast majority of what we do is rejuvenating. Some of what we do with the body is just reshaping it, and that has nothing to do with rejuvenation. But a lot of what we do is rejuvenation. The breast, after, let's say, breastfeeding, will sag a little bit, they'll lose some volume. So we're rejuvenating, we're putting back that volume. Some fat gets accumulated with age that we didn't have when we were a bit younger and gets hard to lose. We remove that fat, right? And we reuse it somewhere else. And so we're rejuvenating the shape of the body. In other parts of cosmetics, rejuvenation is that's the whole point, like facelifts. You're not doing facelift to change the shape of your face. When you're young, you're doing it to look younger as you get older. And I think that's the case for a lot of, things in cosmetic surgery, like injectables, skin procedures. When we have loose skin, that comes with age or severe weight loss, but usually, no matter what, nobody escapes it over time. Eventually, our skin is loose. Well, the same thing as a facelift. You're going to have a breast lift. You're going to have maybe a tummy tuck. You might have to have an inner thigh lift or whatever as things sag. And so I think, and hopefully, wouldn't it be nice, is curing of aging. Aging is the number one disease in the world. Nobody sees it that way, but it is. It's a disease. And the reason I can say that, and we're all going to age, and we age gracefully, and we do it with pride. And I think it's an amazing thing, and aging is beautiful, and it's part of life. But unfortunately, aging comes with very often health issues. It comes with, more diabetes, more heart problems, more comes with Alzheimer's. It comes with all kinds of things that affect us. So it's not just getting gray hair, or a little bit of loose skin. It's everything else that comes with it. So if you can cure aging, you can cure pretty much 98% plus of illnesses that we deal with in the world. You would almost make medicine obsolete. So I think, and of course, we've been running after the fountain of youth forever, but a lot of work has been done in the last 5 to 10 years. A lot of work has been done, and they're continuing to push it aggressively. And I don't know, maybe in our lifetime, maybe not, but that would be something that would be, revolutionary for humanity, but also obviously consequently for aesthetics, because a lot of what we do is reversing aging, or at least trying to, cosmetically. So there'd be no need for that.
Well, the future is going to be very, very interesting. We'll just see which direction it takes.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Duchess, I do have one last question for you, but before I ask it, I want to point people to your website at sculptbody.com. Now,
Yep.
Last question for you. What does beauty mean to you?
That's another great question. You ask great questions. I love it. They're thoughtful. They make sense, and they're relevant. Beauty means to me something, I think, very different than what social media is pushing today. I see beauty in many places. And if we're going to focus on, let's say, women, just because that's the focus of our practice, women are beautiful in so many different ways. And of course, on the inside, we don't even have to get into that, right? That is the eternal quest, is to be beautiful on the inside, right? That it shines out through your skin to the outside world. And that's where it all starts. But if we're going to just focus, since we're talking cosmetics, on the external beauty of women, then I see it in so many places. And I think I've always taken the approach in my practice, and it's what I push at Sculpt all the time. And I do it, not just with our surgeons and our patients, but also in our marketing, is beauty is everywhere. And our job is just to remove that little bit of fat that's preventing that really nice shape from showing. It's there, right? Women are all beautiful in their own way. And the question is, how do we just make them look the way they feel they should look? Not I feel they should look, not social media feels they should look. And when you really stop and listen, you can quickly get to the bottom of that, because the first thing is they'll show you a picture of somebody on social media that they saw, because women are being fed these ideals of beauty that really often don't exist. A lot of women on social media are photoshopped, or the way their body is made is trendy right now and it's 1 in a million. I mean, these are not realistic beauty ideals. And not only are they not realistic, I don't even believe that they're durable. So I believe that beauty should not be trends. It shouldn't be that, 5 years ago, the bigger the butt, the better, and that now it's Ozempic and everybody wants to weigh 90 pounds. There is a lasting beauty, and there's all kinds of standards that have established, and ratios from the waist to hips, and different kind of proportions in the face, in the body. And so we can refine things based on these proportions, these measurements, these accepted universal durable beauty standards, and also always adjusting to the way that woman is made specifically, whoever we have in front of us, and working with her body to bring her natural beauty out and do it in a very natural way that's durable and not one that's trendy. We have patients come to us, having had surgery elsewhere, and they say, "Can you reverse this?" Right? Because now there's a new trend. And I don't like beauty as a trend. I don't believe in it. I think it's a mistake, and I think it's unhealthy for women to be exposed to this. And my message, and I know it's a tough one because everybody's on social media now, scrolling all day long. I don't. I stay away from it. We use it as a tool to educate, but I don't consume it. But my message out there to all women, especially younger women, is try to stay away. If you're going to use social media, do it for anything except establishing beauty standards. Don't look at other women's posts of their bodies, or they're photoshopped or not, what they look like. And this is like the perfect setup to not be happy with what you have, to not be satisfied with what you have. Making a tweak is okay. Wanting to be something else that does or doesn't exist that you're exposed to every day is unhealthy. And so we're here to make the tweaks to bring out that natural beauty, and we're really, really good at it. And we're known for it. But it requires effort, and it requires fighting trends. So the same way I ask our current or future patients, or anybody out there, no matter who they ever choose to use for surgery or never do surgery, which is totally fine, is don't be influenced. Don't let social media tell you what beauty looks like. Right? Don't let others make you feel like what you have is good or not. Right? Now this new trend is 90 pounds. Well, if a woman is a little curvier, there is a natural beauty in that, and they should not be looking at that and feeling like in any way they are inadequate or they need to go on Ozempic too. I think that there's so many different versions of natural beauty, and that's why it's natural. Whereas if it's unnatural, then everybody's trying to look the same. And it shows. And I don't think that that's as beautiful as a woman just bringing out her own natural beauty.
Very well said. Well, there you have it. Dr. Souza sharing his expertise. So, Dr. Souza, where can people contact you in your practice?
Our Instagram is a good place to look. And again, you'll see all kinds of natural beauty on there. Not refined, only one version, but really kind of just women and their shapes. And our website too, if people still use websites. I feel like it's all social media today, but sculptbody.com, sculpt with a Q. Those are probably the best places to find us and to see some of our work and to ask any questions. We're always there to answer questions and educate potential patients.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Souza, this was amazing. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and all your expertise.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to the Beauty Talk podcast. Any questions, please contact the practice directly with the contact information provided during the show. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.